Hey boys and girls, welcome back. So yesterday you heard the read aloud about winter. So today we are going to talk about spring. Now spring comes right after winter. So let's see what Annie has to tell us. Dear 308, after winter, the next season is spring. Spring arrives slowly, bit by bit, beginning in March, and it continues through the months of April and May. The air warms and the ground begins to thaw because the days are longer and there is more sunlight. So thaw is basically when it starts to unfreeze. Usually when you have winter, the ground kind of freezes up a bit. So thawing means that it starts to soften up and it unfreezes. The rivers and streams fill with water from all the melted snow and ice. Tiny green leaves appear on some tree barks. A few new plants may also start to peek through the soil here and there. Hibernating animals wake up from the winter sleep. So hibernating is when certain animals during the winter times go to sleep and they come out when it's nice and warm again. These are all the signs that spring has sprung. So spring is here. Spring is a very windy season. Some people say March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. This means that the weather in spring changes from being stormy and windy in the beginning to calmer and milder by the end. So it starts off being very stormy and windy, and then it gets a little more calm as it ends. In fact, the windy beginning of spring is a perfect time to fly a kite. In addition to the wind, there are also many rainy days in the early spring, particularly in March and April. I love when I get to wear my raincoat and rain boots because then I could splash in the puddles. Do you guys like splashing in the puddles when it rains? When you have your raincoat on and your rain boots? Who likes to splash in the puddles? I'm sure a few of you do. Sometimes after the spring rain showers, you can see a colorful rainbow in the sky. There is another old saying that tells us April showers bring May flowers. This means that the rain of April helps flowering plants to grow big and healthy, so they produce beautiful, fragrant flowers in May and throughout the summer. So the rain that spring brings helps to grow the flowers, helps them bloom. The world outside truly changes during spring. Flowers are one of the most important signs of spring because they tell you that the plant world has come to life once again. Soon bees will be buzzing among the birds. Soon bees will be buzzing among the flowers. Birds will be chirping in the leafy trees, and the afternoon hours will be warm and pleasant. Washington, D.C. is famous for cherry blossoms that bloom here each spring. So where Annie lives, if you look at the picture, this is where she lives. This is Washington, D.C. And these trees have flowers called cherry blossoms. And in the spring, sorry about that, that's the bell. So in the spring, when it's time for the flowers to come out, these trees fill up with flowers, and these are called cherry blossom trees. In April, the cherry trees throughout the city burst into bloom, and millions of brilliant pink and white flowers show that spring is here. My parents and I have a special spring picnic every year under the cherry blossoms. So one of the signs that it's spring is you will see flowers blooming. So normally, if you're, let's say, walking outside and you see the flowers are starting to come out, then you know that it's spring. Farmers in spring. Spring is an important time on farms. For the farmer, It is time to get back out in the field. The farmer must plow his soil and prepare it for planting. So a farm is where people work and they grow food. A farmer is the person who does that work. He plows the field in order to stir up the soil's nutrients, that's the foods for the plants, and loosens the ground so that the seeds can be planted. When the time is right, the farmer will go through his plowed fields and plant his seeds in neat rows. A couple of weeks later, the field will be blooming with little seedlings, and by summer, you won't be able to see the soil beneath the big green plants. So in the spring, farmers get their soil ready to plant the seeds. Spring is also an important time for the animals on the farm. Many animals give birth to new baby animals in the springtime. The barnyard and field are full of baby animals whose mothers nurse and care for them as they grow. Baby horses, called foals, frolic in the field. Lambs nuzzle close to their mother sheep, and ducklings line up and follow their mother duck to the pond. So over here on the left, we have the sheep and the lamb, we have the duck and its ducklings, and we have the horse, right? And its foals. And these babies are usually born in the spring, so that's another sign that it's spring on the farms when you have lots and lots of baby animals. So I guess the best time to visit a farm is in the spring, so you could see the baby animals. Washington, D.C. was built along the banks of the Potomac River. So this is a river that's in Washington, D.C. Rivers usually reach their highest levels during spring. So the amount of water that's in the river, it's at its highest. It's the most in the spring. Why do you think there's the most water in the spring? What happens in the spring that could add more water to the rivers? What do you think? I want you to think about that for a little bit. What happens in the springtime that could add more water to the rivers? All right, I'm going to give you 5 seconds. You could call it out. Ready? Before I give you the answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so 2 things happen. The snow is melting, right? So all that water gets put in there. And then also you have the rain. So rivers usually reach their highest levels during the spring because of the melted snow. Several holidays are celebrated during the springtime. On the Christian holiday of Easter, people often go on Easter egg hunts to look for decorated eggs or Easter baskets. During the Jewish holiday or Passover, special food is served to the family and friends at the Passover Seder. The Hindu holiday of Holi is a festival of colors, during which people celebrate the colors of springtime by dancing, singing, and sprinkling colored water on each other. So there's also different holidays that happen in the spring. What is spring like where you live? Is it different from the spring in Washington, D.C.? Your friend Annie. So Annie told us a whole lot about spring in Washington, D.C. So she said spring is usually kind of windy in the beginning, right? And then the wind calms down later on. She said that there's lots and lots of rain, right? She said there's spring showers that help the plants get the water. And then she also says in Washington particularly, the flowers bloom, and they talked about cherry blossom trees that in the spring bloom with the flowers. So do any of these things happen here? Do you see it raining during the spring? Is the weather a little windy during the springtime? Are there flowers that you see pop up and start to bloom? Yeah, so a lot of these things actually happen here too. Alrighty, so that is it for spring. Tomorrow we will be reading about summer, okay?